WATD presents John Paul, the Car Doctor. All things automotive. Have questions? Call 781-837-4900. Now, here's John Paul, the Car Doctor.
And good Sunday morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Car Doctor program on 95.9 WATD. My name's John Paul, the Car Doctor, here to help you with your car problems on this Sunday morning. And we have our buddy Tim in studio. Good morning, Tim.
Good morning, John.
And Jesse's out doing his spooky thing, whatever he does, where he's out with his big spooky thing, whatever that is he does. So
did you hear that? Did you see that move, John?
I didn't. I did see. I did. Oh, you mean where you sounded scared? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, with us on the phone is our buddy Karl Brauer. He is the executive analyst for iSeeCars.com, a local Massachusetts company if you're out car shopping. And Karl, good morning and welcome back to the Car Doctor program.
Good morning, John Paul. Great to be on with you.
And before we get going, let's talk a little bit about iSeeCars. iSeeCars is a great place to do a little bit of research, think about buying a car, and it's a little bit of sometimes can be a little bit of a fantasy fest to go look at stuff that maybe you have no intention of buying, but you're always interested in looking, right?
I think window shopping for cars is probably one of my biggest pastimes in my free time. Probably more than I should, honestly. But yes, it's a great site to go to because you can just look at across the nation or just across your local community there and filter on everything from price to brand to model to mileage, condition, and it's very easy to potentially find your next car on there.
Or fall down some rabbit hole and you know, my wife says, "What are you doing? What are you looking at?" Yeah, leave me alone. Yeah, so
I've heard that one. I've heard that one too.
You guys put out, and you guys do a ton of different studies, and you know, one of the studies you've done two recently. One of them I think was the one about electric vehicles, and we talk about electric vehicles a fair amount on here. But one of them was electric vehicles cost the most and are driven the least.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what's really great is that we have all this access to this data because of all the, different things going on in the industry and all the cars that are listed out there, and we have all those feeds, and so we can kind of crunch numbers across the country for what's going on with cars. And in this case, what we did is we looked at cars and how far they were being driven. And we can tell that through the odometer readings every year. And so we looked back several years at how many miles each type of car was driven. And what we found was what you just said, John, is that electric cars are driven on average 20% less than gasoline cars. So you can imagine that if you had two cars and you paid the same amount for both cars, and one was driven 20% less than the other over the next 5 years, that car in theory cost you more money per mile because you can get as much use out of it as the person who drove 20% further than you. But if the car cost more, what if the car cost 20% more? Two cars are sold, one costs 20% more than the other car, and it's driven 20% less than the other car. Now you're paying more than the equivalent gasoline car, and you're driving it less. Both sides of the equation are kind of not good for your cost per mile. That's what the case is with electric cars, as I think most people probably have a sense of. They cost more than the equivalent gasoline car, and people might have guessed that they're driven less. In this case, they're driven 20% less than gasoline cars. They cost more, and result is a 63.6% higher per mile cost. More than 50% higher per mile cost for an electric car versus a gasoline car because of that.
And are electric cars still one of the most researched things on the site? Maybe not the most sold, but are they still some of the most researched?
I think things like Ford F-150s and Camrys and all the high sellers tend to track with the high researched cars. So you get a lot of Civic and a lot of RAV4 and CRV and F-150. I think electric cars definitely get an outsized because they're still, give or take 7% of the national market, and they're getting more than 7% of the research for sure. So just like we were talking before, a lot of curiosity, a lot of interest in just learning more about them. more than their market share, but not necessarily purchases for sure.
Yeah, and I think, and we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago with somebody from a company that specializes in leasing electric cars or helping fleets of electric vehicles, and he was saying, the whole range anxiety thing, eventually that will go away and people won't think much more of it. I took that with a little bit of a grain of salt, that I'm not quite seeing that yet. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting because I think people like to talk about things like, the average person only drives 30 or 40 miles a day, and if you have a home charger, you never, have to go to the gas station and all these things. Well, see, all of that is true if you drive a gasoline car too, right? If you drive a gasoline car and you only go 40 miles a day, you're hardly going to the gas station either, right? It's like, you never have to go to a gas station because you have an electric car. So all the things that people want to claim the EVs have the advantage on, they're true for gasoline cars too. You hardly go to the gas station if you're only driving 40 miles a day and you get 300 or 400 mile range out of your gas car. But when you do have to drive 300 or 400 miles in a single day and maybe more, you can instantly switch to, I have an emergency situation. I have to drive my gasoline car a far distance. You can't do that with the EV. And so I think that's where every time I hear about this, average daily commute or average driven thing, it's like, look, how many 3-row SUVs are sold in this country every year? 1 or 2, right? How many people are taking 6 other people with themselves off-road every day? Almost nobody, ever.
Yeah.
So people buy for their max use case. Anyone knows this who knows anything about the U.S. consumer and the U.S. car market. So just because most of the time an EV will serve you, just like most of the time a Toyota Yaris or a Nissan Versa would serve you, but they don't sell as many of those as they sell as 3-row SUVs and even CRVs and RAV4s.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, you say that about the use scenario of what people think about. I'm currently in Florida, and I swear every old guy here has a Chevy pickup truck and a Corvette. Because and they don't use either of them for their intended purpose. Right. I look at the pickup truck. There's one person in it. There's nothing in the bed. I look at the Corvette. That might be a year or 2 or 10 years old. It's got 0 miles on it almost. But they bought it because they wanted it, and they said this is the vehicle I want. So it is sort of interesting. You're right that people buy these 3-row SUVs because they might put 5 or 6 people in them at some point, but most of the time they don't. So looking at that, it is sort of interesting. And you brought up the point about how people drive. Pre-COVID, I was driving about 120 miles round trip back and forth to work, and I was putting gas in my car every other day. After COVID, and we adopted a different work plan, there's times I go 3 weeks and don't put gas in my car.
Yeah, I had a friend who, we'll kind of debate this back and forth, and he hasn't bought an EV either, by the way, but he's kind of more open to the idea that they're going to take over than I am. And, he's like, look, I got a friend who has one, and she hardly ever goes to, she hardly even has to charge it because she only drives like 20 or 30 miles a day. And I said, yeah, well, I've got a 2001 BMW 325 Ci with over 215,000 miles on it, clearly a gasoline car. I finally put gas in it the other day, and the last time I put gas in it was February, because I so rarely have long commutes, or I'm in press cars and I'm using those, but right. I'm hardly going to the gas station too. See, that's the thing is all these low use case for driving work for both cars, but they only work for one of the type of cars for sudden out of the blue long distance driving that comes up all of a sudden.
Yeah, it is sort of interesting, and I guess and I've said this for years now. I guess it is great that we live someplace and we live in a time where we have all kinds of choice. And if you want to go out and buy a Tesla, go out and buy one. If you want to go out and buy a Hellcat, go out and buy one. If you want to go out and buy the hottest Ford Mustang built to date, go and buy one of those. It is interesting that we live in this time where we do have an awful lot of choice still.
Absolutely. And, there was a point in time where I leased a Fiat 500e because the incentives for them, and they were only basically sold in California and I think maybe Oregon. And it was $49 a month lease, John Paul. $49 because of all the subsidies between the state and the federal and Chrysler. And this was the car that Sergio Marchione said, please don't buy these. We lose money on every one we sell. And honestly, that quote was like, wow, you never get to buy something from a big corporation and you end up the winner. So I'm going to go do this, right? So I leased that car, and we put 23,000 miles on it in 3 years. And what happened was the gas car that my wife normally drove, which she would put about $135, it was like almost within $10 a month, $135 a month in gas in that car. She was putting $25 to $30 a month in it because she still used it when she had to go more than 50 miles and didn't want to stress. That thing only had like an 80-mile range. Yeah. But she mostly used the Fiat. And I'm a huge believer in, hey, look, if you have the garage space and the funds to have more than one car in your fleet, and you can use an EV 80-90% of the time, you should absolutely do that. You are saving gas trips to the gas station. You're charging at home. You're not putting out any emissions. That's fabulous. But to say that, okay, all of us are going to use an EV all the time, that's the fait accompli. It's just a matter of time before we're all in EVs. It's like, well, I don't know. I like to go to Denver a lot, where I grew up, and I live in Los Angeles, and I don't see myself using an EV for that. So,
yeah, I think, and I got criticized by readers. I said, the future might be here now, is the hybrid garage, the EV on one side and the gas car on the other side. And that gas car might be a plug-in hybrid. It might be a hybrid. Who knows what it might be. But, the hybrid garage is sort of, maybe if, like you said, you have the garage space and the budget, have the EV for when you need an EV and have the gas car when you need the gas car.
Can you imagine, John Paul, having more than one tool in your toolbox to get jobs done instead of saying, no, we're taking all these, you get one tool to use? I think most of us would prefer to have more choice, like you said.
Oh, hopefully it's a Swiss Army knife or a Leatherman or something. So, yeah.
True.
Yeah. The other interesting thing you guys put out recently is about recalls, and Tesla, Porsche, Lucid have the most projected lifetime recalls. How did that get calculated?
Yeah, so it's really fascinating, right? We have access to all the recall information. Most people do. It's all in the NHTSA data banks. And so you can look at recall rates for different models over time. And it's pretty easy to start to see a pattern. What we did is we started to see a pattern. And essentially, it's not uncommon for a car to have more recalls, surprise, surprise, when it's either an all-new model that's been launched or even a redesign of an existing model that's all new. So you get a kind of cluster of recalls after these cars come out. And some hardly have any, but they have more than they have any other time. Others have a bunch when they first come out. What's interesting is how many do they keep having after one of these kind of high recall time periods where they've just been launched or redesigned. And again, you have certain brands and certain models where they have very few recalls either, when they're first redesigned or launched, and they have almost none after that, or they even have almost none when they're first launched. Then you have some that have a whole bunch in both times. They have a bunch when they're first launched, and they keep kind of having them. And so using some, data analysis and wizardry and calculations, you just start to be able to not only tell how many recalls a car has had, but how many it's likely to have based on the pattern of how many it has at a given point in time in its lifespan. And through this, kind of data wizardry, we were able to pretty accurately start predicting the amount of recalls cars would have over a 30-year period. And yes, when we did that and we ran all the numbers, the Porsche Taycan, which is an EV and not an inexpensive one, that one had a projected 30-year lifetime recall rate of 70.7, 70 recalls. That's over 2 a year. And just for context, the average car's lifetime recalls over a 30-year period is 3.2. And the top 25 cars for least recalls that we have on our list on our site have less than 1. They range from 0.2 to 0.6 lifetime recalls. So you're swinging from less than 1 up to 70 over a 30-year period, depending on which car you buy. And the Taycan was number 1. All 4 of the Tesla models were in the top 10, and so was the Lucid Air. So you did have, 6, 7 of the top 10 cars being EVs in the top 10 most recalled cars, projected lifetime recalls.
And Tesla even admits they had kind of a cute phrase for it. You know, they do a lot of their electronics in something called shadow mode, which sort of is, well, you know, we know there might be a problem, but you know, let's put the cars out there and then we'll come up with a fix later on.
Yeah, they do. I mean, I think if you were going to ask which brand uses their customers for QA control more than any other brand in the auto industry, I think we could probably guess which brand that would be. And Tesla is that. But here's the thing that's important to remember too, and we do want to keep this in mind, is that there's things called over-the-air updates, OTAs. You've probably heard of these, John Paul. And we actually ran the numbers for which cars have the most recalls with and without OTAs. And when you have OTAs removed, in other words, you don't count OTAs as recalls, which you still should, because even an OTA recall that you can fix in the middle of the night while the car's parked, be through an over-the-air update, even that is still a safety concern from NHTSA enough to issue a recall. But in theory, you don't have to go to a dealer to fix it. And when you take those out, all the Teslas fall out of the top 25 most recalled. So does the Rivian. The Lucid Air drops from, I think it's 5 to 25. It barely makes the top 25 list. Interestingly, the Porsche Taycan remains number one. It had no over-the-air recall updates capable of, so it still has 70.7 recalls with or without over-the-air update help.
And I was a little shocked, I guess might be the right word, that the Mini was in the least recall list.
Yeah, it's funny. If you look at the least recalled list, first of all, there's a bunch of Mercedes and Lexus all over it. Maybe not too surprising. Yep. But you also get a fair amount of kind of performance cars, or like what I would call lifestyle cars, like you were talking about, the Corvettes in Florida. And right there at the top is the Mini, specifically the Mini convertible. So it's the Cooper convertible. So here's a car that probably doesn't get a lot of miles on it, probably doesn't have a high use demand, and it doesn't seem to have a lot of recalls. Now, is that a reflection of how well the car's built, or how little it's stressed because it's not driven as far? That would be a question to ask. Number 6 is the Audi TTS. So not even the Audi TT, but the TTS. We broke that out. A very high performance version of that. And then number 11 is the Audi TT RS, right? And you also have the Nissan 370Z in this list. So you had a few performance cars, also the Audi RS5 Sportback. So one or two or more Mercedes AMG GT performance cars. Now, maybe I like to make the argument that maybe these cars get a little more love from the manufacturer because they're performance cars or lifestyle cars. They're just being built. A lot of times maybe you have hand-built engines for these high-performance cars, or they're built on a separate special assembly line. Who knows? But maybe they're just engineered and assembled a little more high quality because they're considered high performance. They have to be, extra capable of hard duty and, like we were talking about, track duty. Maybe no one ever takes them there, but in theory the manufacturer wants them set up in case they do.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing is it's pretty easy to confuse recalls with overall reliability. So a car may, leak water, the top on the Mini Cooper might not work when it's supposed to, but that isn't a recall. That just means it was not that well designed and it broke, versus an actual safety recall where the wheels fall off.
Exactly, yeah. You definitely, and again, a recall may or may not ever strand you at the side of the road, right? It's a recall because something you got to go in. It could be anything as minor as like the wiper blades fall off because there was a problem with one of the bolts that they used to hold the wiper blades on. To, I always think I think the recall that I like to reference the most is kind of scary. If you remember, was the Chevy Bolt, another electric car, where there was a point in time where it was like, you'll hear people say, your recall notice, it's like, don't drive the car until you address this recall. What did they say about the Chevy Bolt during its most scary recall? Don't park it near your house. Of course, don't drive it. Don't even park it near your house. And I was like, okay, that's a scary recall notice. Get away from your house.
Yeah. And if you lived in a condo or an apartment and you didn't have any choice, because there's no parking, then you're like, oh, do I have to worry about my house burning down? Yeah. So
yeah. Well, I heard there were associations, like homeowner associations and condo associations, that were like not letting people have them. Like it's like you can't own one of those here, or you can't park it anywhere near here because of this same recall. Yes.
So I guess when you are car shopping, it does make sense to, let's look at the list of cars that potentially are going to be recalled most over the lifetime of the vehicle. In one way, recalls are good. They certainly address safety-related issues, and in some cases they upgrade the vehicle, and everybody comes out as a winner at the end. On the other side is kind of a pain to have to go into the dealership twice a year additionally to get recalls taken care of. But I guess it makes sense as you're shopping if there's something you're looking at, and like you pointed out, if you are thinking about going out and buying the latest greatest Tesla, and that it is in the top of the recall list, but on the other hand, if while you're sleeping most of the recalls get done, how painful is that? So
100%. 100%. And I would like to say that, whether it's Porsche or Tesla or any other brands that are on here multiple times, what's worse than having recalls addressed, John Paul? Not having them addressed or not having them identified and called out, right? So I would argue, you could make an argument that a brand like Porsche, who I'm a big fan of, and I know their products pretty well, they clearly are very active and proactive on making sure the cars are safe, because they're making sure the recalls are aware, they're issued, consumers are aware, and they want them addressed. So,
totally off subject, only because the name came up. Where do you think Lucid's going to end up? Do you think they're going to make it?
That they're probably the toughest call for me to make, John Paul. Great question. Like you ask, obviously Tesla's pretty much made it, although we'll see what happens in the next few years, but they seem pretty secure. I think Rivian is probably the next, I think they're the best lock on a likely long-term success. I'm not saying they are definitely going to succeed. I'm saying that I would put more money on them than a lot of these other startups. And then there's ones where I'm a little more, questionable. I'm not sure, about VinFast. I think we already know what's going on with Fisker. Lucid's right there in that kind of gray area, John Paul. I don't know if I'd call them more than likely to make it like I would Rivian, but I'm not sure I'd call them less than likely to make it like Fisker obviously is. They're somewhere in there, but that's a tough call.
Yeah. I remember when Fisker and Tesla first came out, and I was somewhere and I was talking to somebody in the industry, and I said, I think in 20, 40 years, whatever the case is, we'll look back at Tesla and Fisker, and as they didn't make it, we'll think of them as sort of the Tucker of this time. They had a really good time. They had fun, and their cars were interestingly different, but they didn't make it. And it looks like the Fisker prediction might be right twice in this time. So, yeah.
I know. I think you get a pass on being wrong about Tesla because you were right twice about Fisker.
yeah, exactly. So, and the automobile industry, if you look back at the beginning of the automobile industry, most of the car companies went out of business.
I always say that, John Paul, that people do not know that there were something, if I'm not mistaken, in 1926, 400 automakers in the U.S. And then something happened in 29 related to Wall Street. I forget. Anyway, something happened. Yeah. And all but 40 of them, 90% of them went away in a 5-year period. And I kind of feel like there was this mad rush into the EV space because everyone saw it as the next big thing.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And, there's a rush into that space, and I think we need or there's just going to be some cleaning out with over time,
Good. Tim, you said we have a question from a listener?
Yeah, Pat from North Plymouth called in. Regarding with the evolution and as electric vehicles become more common on the road, what's going to happen with the state gas tax? How's the state going to get their money in that kind of thing?
Has California figured that out, Carl? Are they charging a vehicle miles driven tax?
Not yet, but I'm sure I know it's being talked about. And I believe, is it Oregon? One of the states right next to us, I think it's Oregon, has implemented that to some level. So an excellent question, a worthy question, because, yes, if you start to lose revenue from fuel because people are buying less, then you're going to need more from some other form. And a use tax, a mileage tax is it. And ironically, to me, it's just so crazy. We've been told for decades we've got to get off gas gasoline. Gas is bad for all these reasons. And now you've got people buying EVs to try to do that, and it's like, oh man, we got to figure out another way to get money out of you. It's like, yeah, but I'm doing what you told me to do for decades, and now I'm doing it. And the flip side that's even more interesting is EVs in general, you might have heard this, John Paul, but they're heavier than a traditional gasoline car in almost every circumstance. That means that they tear up their tires faster, and they tear up the roads more. They're harder on the roads. So ironic that they would not be paying as much in the maintenance of the roads because they don't buy gasoline, and yet they're tearing the roads up on average more than the average gas car.
Yeah. So, and they already have terminology for it. VMT tax, vehicle miles travel tax. So, the government's already there waiting to figure out a way to send you a bill for that. So, hey, Karl, as always, it's a pleasure talking to you. It's always a lot of fun, and iSeeCars.com, great place to go to shop, buy, sell, and or just fantasize about the stuff you can never afford.
Precisely. I do all of them over time.
There you go. Hey, Karl, thanks a lot, and have a good rest of your Sunday, and talk to you again soon.
Great being on with you, John Paul. Have a good day.
You as well. Bye-bye. Well, we need to take a break, pay some bills, but last week we had Patrick Jones on, the CEO of Bling Sauce, and they have agreed to give away a Bling Sauce kit, which is going to be their their trim and interior cleaner and outside kit, and they will mail it out to you, which is even better. While we're taking this break, I'm going to try to come up with maybe a good trivia question or something to use, and if you win, we Bling Sauce will send you that. And remember, if you want to buy Bling Sauce, if you go on their website, put in Radio 20 and get a 20% discount. So pretty good, because you're listening to the Car Doctor program right here on 95.9 WATD. We'll be right back.
AAA is with you at every moment in your life. They have 24/7 roadside assistance, which covers you in any car you're driving or riding in, even a rental or your friend's wheels. They have great member rates on home and auto insurance, savings on travel, hotels, and rental cars, and discounts on hundreds of your favorite brands. You're covered on and off the road. Learn more at aaa.com/join.
Start your Sunday off right with brunch at the Old Hitching Post in Hanson. The Old Hitching Post offers a full buffet brunch every Sunday from 10 to 1. Fill up on all your favorites like eggs and bacon, sausage, home fries, French toast casserole, mac and cheese, homemade hash, fresh seafood, rice, veggies, fresh fruit, quiche, yogurt parfaits, pastries, ham, omelets, eggs Benedict, and more. The Old Hitching Post Sunday brunch from 10 to 1 at 48 Spring Street, Route 58 in Hanson. Online at oldhp.com. That's OLDEHP.com.
Mark your calendar for the Talking Information Center Starry Night Gala, happening on Thursday, June 6th, 5 till 9 at Indian Pond Country Club in Kingston, for a packed night of food and fun to raise awareness for this longtime South Shore nonprofit organization. The Talking Information Center is a volunteer-driven radio reading service serving the visually impaired population of Massachusetts. The evening is hosted by WATD radio personality Rob Hakala, and live music and dancing provided by the multi-New England Music Award-nominated band Total Strangers. The evening also features great auction items and recognition of star TIC volunteers of over 46 years. That's the Talking Information Center Starry Night Gala, Thursday, June 6th, 5 till 9 at Indian Pond Country Club in Kingston. For tickets, more information, or to just make a contribution, visit the Talking Information Center at ticnetwork.org. That's ticnetwork.org.
Hey, I'm Ashley Jordan. Tune in to Twilight Showcase Radio, hosted by Sandy Stride and Keith James on 95.9 WATD and 95.9WATD.com. Search for Twilight Showcase Radio on Facebook and visit twilightshowcase.org.
Twilight Showcase, tonight from 8 to 10 on 95.9 WATD.
Well, I'm not bragging
Car Doctor program on 95.9 WATD, your South Shores radio station. And remember, if you miss the program live, you can always find it on podcasts. If you just Car Doctor Radio, you can find it on, or you can go right on WATD's website, and under podcasts, you can click on it, and there's a link there as well. So you can find, all the latest information. And I promised you we would do trivia. We haven't done trivia in ages, and even the folks at AAA are mad at me. They're like, you haven't given away any AAA memberships lately. So we need to do that too. So, but this one comes courtesy of Bling Sauce. And again, we had Patrick Jones on last week, and I bought their product for, and I've mentioned before, I have a little tiny boat, little small fiberglass boat. Hardly anything fancy, but it does, it's in salt water, and it does get salt water stains all over it. And I was at the store, and there was this stuff called hot sauce, which takes off all the water stains, water spots. And I really liked it. And then I saw this stuff called this other product made for cars, and I emailed the folks there and said, hey, I'd like to talk about it. And they sent me a sample of it, and I tried it on both of our cars that are sitting here right now, the Hyundai and the Volkswagen. The Volkswagen's black, and anybody who's ever owned a black car knows that wax on a black car they look great when they look great, and they look terrible when they're dirty. And I honestly don't really like cleaning cars much, but I don't like having a dirty car either. So, and what I typically use is if I wash the car, great, I wash the car. If not, I use, I'm a fan of Meguiar's wash and wax product. I think it works really well. But I also like, I tried this Bling product, and it worked really good, and it looks really shiny, and people look at the car and go, wow, you must have spent a long time. No, I sprayed it and wiped it off. A couple of good microfiber cloths, and that's about all you need to do. And where I live, we have a fair amount of dust because there's a kind of a dirt-ish parking lot at the end of where I live, and a lot of dust travels up this way, so I like having a clean car. But we're going to be giving away a 3-pack of Bling Sauce. I believe it's a 3-pack. I think that's what we heard. And it's the full-size bottles. And here's a little tip. You might look at Walmart or AutoZone and look for their product. And you go, hey, 20% off at their website is about the same price as buying it bigger bottles on their website. The bottles are a larger size. So even though it looks cheaper, the big box store, they probably had to package it for that reason at the big box store. So again, Radio 20 will get you a discount. I tried it out. Works. So anyway. So in 1967, there was a very popular movie starring Dustin Hoffman and Anne Bancroft, The Graduate. What was the vehicle that was in The Graduate? What was the vehicle that was in The Graduate? And I think Tim's too young to know this, but I think the investment advice to Dustin Hoffman was buy plastics. But what was the vehicle that was in the movie The Graduate? If you know the answer to this, give us a call. And Tim, up to you if you want to do right or wrong answers. You know the answer now.
Yes,
so
I do.
Yes. It's up to you to decide what you want to do.
Okay.
And it is all you have to do is give us a call at 781-837-4900 if you know what was the vehicle that was in The Graduate. And we will send you, Bling Sauce is going to send it directly. All I have to do is provide your name, address, phone number, and email would be helpful. And then they can get the product out to you. They said they would direct ship it because they know radio hosts have no budget.
Are contest folks allowed to Google this or just take a shot?
How can you not Google these days?
Well, you just don't pick up the phone. That's all. Just use your noggin.
I think people might know the answer by just being smart. And
the lines are
remembering.
ringing. Here we go.
I bet they are. So, what was the vehicle in the 1967 film, The Graduate? You don't have to tell us the year, but if you know the answer, give us a call and we will send you some Bling Sauce. And again, you can go to blingsauce.com and check out their products. And if you do decide to buy a product there, put in Radio 20. You will get a discount. And that was kind enough of Patrick Jones, the president and CEO of Bling Sauce. So, and I get nothing out of this, just so you know, with all these days of product endorsements, and no, I got nothing. It's it's a good product, and I like it. When it's a good product, I like to talk about it. So there you go. Couple of things that came in the email. A regular listener to the program has a 2017 Lexus RX 350. It's got over 200,000 miles on it. It's having some intermittent starting problems. Car stumbles when it starts. It doesn't start when first cranking the engine over. We also hear what is a low-pitched exhaust or vacuum leak that may be causing the engine to idle somewhat rough. 2017, even though it's 7 years old, I wouldn't expect a exhaust leak. Possibly, but not likely. The exhaust systems on cars today, even with 200,000 miles on them, last hundreds of thousands of miles and 10 plus years, because they're mostly made out of stainless steel and they last a really long time. He says also there's no check engine light on the dash. They did put a can of fuel engine cleaner in with no success. Fuel engine cleaners are kind of a good preventative measure, can do a little bit of good. A local shop did a fuel system cleaning last year. Other than that, the car's been a great car. Any suggestions? At this point, could it be just preventative maintenance? Could it be maintenance? At 200,000 miles, spark plugs probably should be on their third set by now. A lot of spark plugs can go 100,000 miles, some 60,000. People can push them a couple 100,000. But when was the last time the plugs were changed? The fuel filter in the car may be starting to get clogged, even though Toyota claims the fuel filter in this car can last the life of the vehicle. It may be getting a little bit lazy, and or the other thing is one of the sensors, especially the temp sensor, maybe outside of its normal range a little bit. Maybe it's not recording cold enough, so it's not working the way it should. So what I would do at this point is good visual inspection. Look for vacuum leaks. Look for an exhaust leak. If there is one, I don't think there is, but look for vacuum leaks. And then do a good scan of all the various computer systems in the car just to make sure everything's working okay. And it wouldn't hurt to pull a couple of plugs and see what the plugs look like. I think that's a good place to start. So, Tim, where are we?
We're going to America's hometown. We've got Marty in the lovely Pine Hills of Plymouth, Massachusetts.
Okay, Marty, what do you think?
The Alfa Romeo Spider.
Now, did you cheat?
No, I didn't cheat. I'm a big Alfa Romeo fan. I had a 1974 GT Veloce. So I love Alfas.
Is it because of the ride, the handling, or is it they have the coolest grill out there?
Definitely the ride. The handling is remarkable. I've owned Porsches, owned BMWs, and there's something about the Alfa's ride and the way it handles is just impeccable. I just really love it. In fact, I had the SUV, the Stelvio, and my wife has the new one, the Denali.
So with a little bit of Bling Sauce, your cars will look beautiful.
Oh, definitely.
All right.
Especially the hot sauce.
Yeah, the hot sauce is for boats. So that's
okay.
but this is the new stuff for cars they just came out with. And like I said, I tried it just to. Because I like talking about stuff that works, and sometimes people will send me stuff, and I'll be like, maybe it has a place somewhere, but it didn't work for me, kind of thing. This stuff I think works good, and it's easy to use, and you'll be the envy of everyone in Pine Hills.
That's great. Well, thank you.
All right. Well, stay right there. Stay right there. And Tim, are you all set?
Okay. Marty is all set. I got his info.
All right. Good. All right. Thank you very much, Marty.
All right,
thank you very much, Tim.
Love
all right.
show.
Thank you. Take care. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.
Our phone number, 781-837-4900. Tim, do we have another call?
Do you? Well, I was waiting until you asked another question, but I can get someone for you. Yeah.
Oh, well, no, we're done. We're done for trivia for now. Okay.
Oh, all right.
No, we're going to do this again next week. Just to.
All right, one question per week. Okay.
One question per week. Okay. So that's it for today. So. Next week we'll probably give away. They told us they're giving us 2 sets of Bling sauce, and it's the bigger bottles, and it's they're going to give 2 sets of that away. So we'll do it again next week because it's fun to do this. So it's always good. So. And look, the phone rang again.
Yep, and asking you shall receive. We've got one of our faithful listeners to WATD, Tom in Weymouth.
I love our listener family.
Me
I love
too.
our regulars.
Yes.
It just, and I really, somebody said to me once, listener family, and I'm like, that's what I kind of consider the people that call in regularly and the people that listen. They're part of my family here. So
yeah,
as is Tim.
Oh, thank you, John.
Yeah, there you go. All right, let's talk to Tom. Tom, good morning.
Hi, John. So what do we call you, Dad?
I hope not, yeah.
He's Uncle John. Uncle John.
Well, Father's Day is coming up, so maybe, yeah.
Right.
Actually, this is kind of a funny story, and it's funny in a weird way. I worked with at the time, a younger girl. She was probably in her late 20s, maybe mid-20s, and I helped her with her car problems. I helped her with some other stuff. I'd sit and talk to her about, she had few things going on in her life. And one day she gives me a card, and it's a Father's Day card. And I said to her, well, Father's Day card? What's this? I don't have kids. And she goes, well, you're like my work dad. You listen to me, and when I have trouble. And it was one of the sweetest things anyone ever did. It was actually kind of nice. So.
It really is
and
nice,
now she's some fancy executive somewhere. So
There you go, John. Today I didn't know the answer myself anyway. So, did I hear this week that Chevrolet is dropping some model car or something?
Yeah, it's the Chevy Malibu. Sounds like it's going away.
Wow.
So it's leaving. It's sort of like Ford. Ford's got the only sedan they have is the Mustang, and it sounds like there's not going to be a lot of Chevrolet sedans. Let's face it, there's more money being made in SUVs than there is sedans. The Malibu I thought was a perfectly acceptable car. It wasn't the best car in the world. It wasn't the worst, So it was a perfectly acceptable car. But yeah, we're seeing, the auto industry is getting weirder and weirder all the time. Somebody wrote to me just this week, and they have a Jeep Patriot, I think, and it's 14 years old. Both the Jeep and themselves are getting older, and they want to replace the car because it's getting old, and they know it's going to have problems, and they're getting older, and they know they're going to have problems, so they want dependability. And they also said they want to buy an American car, and I'm like, woo. And I'm like, it's hard to do. And I said, the Jeep is, Stellantis, which is half Peugeot and half Fiat, and I think they're headquartered in Amsterdam, of all places. Any of the smaller SUVs you buy, and they want a smaller SUV, and they said, or a sedan, and I'm like, I don't know if there isn't a lot of sedans, and the Chevrolet Trailblazer is made in Korea. They said, well, what about the Ford Bronco Sport? I said, made in Mexico. I said, they are American companies, but they're building, the cars are being built outside of the United States, which I guess when they sell here is good, but there's, and I said, I hate to.
Cars being made in America.
Yeah, well, and that's what I said, and my answer was, the Hondas are made in Ohio, the Hyundais are made in Alabama, there's I think the Toyota RAV4 might be made here. There was a time, 30 years ago, mostly all the GM cars were made in the United States. A lot of them were made in Canada right over the border, but most of them were made in the United States. And then, when that whole, and what was it called, NAFTA, where it was, you could build stuff in Mexico, and that the Ford Bronco Sport, the Escape, and the Maverick are all built at the Ford plant in Mexico. So, I kind of like the idea when, somebody like a Hyundai or a Honda or a Mazda or, whoever, sticks a plant in the United States and it employs a bunch of people. I think that's a good thing. I don't know.
Yeah. Are there any statistics, like who's buying cars? Like, is it more men and more women are buying the SUVs now, or is it just...
women influence something like 65% of the vehicle purchases or 70% of the vehicle purchases. There isn't that... I mean, if you look around at sedans, you can buy an Audi sedan or a Mercedes or a BMW, but, you're not going to buy a Lincoln sedan. You're not going to buy a Ford sedan. Chrysler, is kind of, they had the Challenger and the Charger and the 300. Those are all essentially going away. Jaguar kind of said they built their last gasoline car. They're all going to be electric, and who knows how that's going to go. There isn't that many sedans right now, and it's sort of interesting where it's all going to go. I did see the new sort of Buick SUV, and it sort of looks like a station wagon-y kind of thing. I still think somewhere along the line somebody's going to come out with, some sort of a station wagon that's going to be, better than an SUV because it's going to be situated the right height and shape. But I don't know. Who knows? We don't know.
No, we don't know. I just noticed that when I see more cars, I tend to watch and I see more men driving them, and I see more women driving SUVs, the new ones, and then I see lots of older women driving older cars, Camrys and Toyotas.
Yeah.
And stuff
Well,
like that.
and some of that's dependability. I mean, Honda Accords and Toyota Camrys are some of the best sedans on the planet. So there's no reason to think of anything other than that. So, but I mean, you kind of look at it. One of the reasons that a lot of women drive SUVs is because you do sit up a little higher, and in general, not always, but in general, women are shorter. So sitting up in a little SUV gives people a little bit better view. Years back when my wife got in a car crash and totaled her car, she started driving the SUV we owned at the time, and she said, "You know what? I do feel a little bit better sitting up higher, getting a little bit better view of the road, especially after the crash where she became kind of a nervous driver afterwards. She felt like she was in a little bit more control." And that's probably one of the reasons why you see that. And, the moms of the world, putting their kids in the SUV and all the stuff that comes with kids probably makes sense. And maybe the guys drive the sedans because they feel sportier. I don't know.
John, there was a guy sitting next to me in a restaurant, and I could hear him talking. His phone was there, and he had his car in, and they said they needed a water pump. It was some kind of Volkswagen. He didn't hear, but it was like $1,700. He was like, "Wow, I don't have that." Is that a lot?
Well, it could have been a Ford Explorer too, because Ford decided in their infinite wisdom to put the water pump driven by the timing chain. So get to and it's even worse. Someone emailed me this week, and they said their car came up with a check engine light code, and they did a little bit of research, and it was a GM, later model GM, and they did a little bit of research, and they said it probably needs a thermostat, and the dealer quoted them $1,600 to do the thermostat. And they said, "How can that be?" He said, "When I was a kid, I replaced the thermostat in my car for $6. And I said, because GM in their wisdom on that engine decided to put the thermostat under the intake manifold.
Wow.
So you have to pull all the stuff out of the way to get to the intake manifold, then take the intake manifold off to get to the thermostat. So who thought that was a good idea? So, could it have been the same thing in that Audi or Volkswagen? Yeah, could be. Absolutely.
Wow. Oh, well. Yeah. Okay, I'll let you go.
Okay.
Calls.
All right.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, Tom. Bye-bye. Want to talk a little bit about, speaking of things that come in the mail sometimes. I got a while back. There's a company called Works, and Works is they make all kinds of stuff. Garden tools, weed whackers, leaf blowers, vacuum cleaners, and they sent me one of their products, and it was a half-inch drive impact gun, and it was pretty good, but it didn't have a whole lot of power. Now they've come out with a new one that is much more heavy duty. It still runs on the same 20-volt power share battery, and I have purchased a couple of Works weed whacker, leaf blower, stuff like that. So I have the batteries. So I'm like, I want to try this impact gun, and the thing is crazy powerful. In my little boat trailer, which I readily admit I don't take that good of care of, because it dips in the salt water, take it out, and I'm like, I want to take the wheels off, grease up the bearings, and last time I tried to take the lug nuts off, they were pretty rusted in place, and I tried the Works half-inch impact gun, just didn't have. I had to break them free by hand and then take them off. This new one is something like 1,500 foot-pounds. My one criticism of it is heavy. I think with the extended battery, thing must weigh close to 9 pounds, but it has plenty of torque and power to remove lug nuts. Just a nice unit. We'll talk about it later on. But Tim seems to tell me there's another phone call. Let's go to the phones. Good morning. You're on the Car Doctor program.
Oh, hello? Sorry, John. I was answering another call. You've got 3 calls lined up. First, we'll go to John in Norwood.
And we have about 3 minutes. We still need to take a break, right?
Yes.
All right. Well, let's try John first. Okay. Go ahead.
Hi, John.
Hi.
I have an appointment with my mechanic tomorrow, so I own a 99 Maxima.
Yep.
And when I corner, I'm getting this knocking noise from the rear driver's side. Any idea what something like that might be?
No, it could be at that age. It could be any piece of the suspension is just kind of worn out at this point. So what I would want to do is I would want to get it on a lift like a drive-on lift, like they use for oil changes and alignments and stuff like that, where all the weight is on the car, and then you can get a really good look at rear suspension bushings, sway bar bushings, even the rear. Then jack it up and check rear wheel bearings to see what's loose. Stuff like that can go from something pretty minor to something pretty major quick, and you want to make sure that it's safe to drive. So you're doing the right thing, bringing it to the shop, let them know what it is, and call us back next week and tell us.
What's the best thing to do to get the guy into the car and drive and let him listen to it, or does he do that on his own?
They probably would do it on their own, but just so you and them are on the same page, I would say, hey, do you have a minute I can take somebody out for a ride just so we're listening to the same sound? If they're not super busy, doing that is always the best way to do it, and it's best for both of you. It's best for him. It's best for the shop mechanic, and best for you, because they're going to hear the same thing you hear. Sometimes you get in a car and I'm like, what noise are you talking about? So yeah, it makes sense. I would do that.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. All right. Thanks, John. Yep. Bye-bye. Why don't we take a quick break? If you're on hold, stay right there. We will do our best to try to get to you before 12 o'clock. We'll be right back.
Seems everything I buy these days has got a foreign name. From the kind of car I drive to my video game.
I got a Nikon camera, a Sony color TV.
But the one that I love is from the USA and standing next to me. My baby is American made, born and bred in the USA. From her silky long hair to her sexy long legs, my baby is American made.
AAA is with you at every moment in your life. They have 24-hour, 7 roadside assistance, which covers you in any car you're driving or riding in, even a rental or your friend's wheels. They have great member rates on home and auto insurance, savings on travel, hotels, and rental cars, and discounts on hundreds of your favorite brands. You're covered on and off the road. Learn more at aaa.com/join.
Start your Sunday off right with brunch at the Old Hitching Post in Hanson. The Old Hitching Post offers a full buffet brunch every Sunday from 10 to 1. Fill up on all your favorites like eggs and bacon, sausage, home fries, French toast casserole, mac and cheese, homemade hash, fresh seafood, rice, veggies, fresh fruit, quiche, yogurt parfaits, pastries, ham, omelets, eggs Benedict, and more. The Old Hitching Post Sunday brunch from 10 to 1 at 48 Spring Street, Route 58 in Hanson. Online at oldhp.com. That's OLDEHP.com.
Hey there, folks. It's Quinn Kelly reminding you to tune in Sunday night at 5 for the South Shore's first voice in sports talk radio, The Sports Exchange. Unmatched coverage of local high school action as well as a relatable voice on all things Boston Pro Sports. We've got you covered live at 5 every Sunday night. Have a question for our host, missed last week's show, or just want to share a great sports story? You can find us on Twitter at SE on WATD. But remember, mark your calendar, folks, and we'll see you Sunday night at 5 for the Sports Exchange on 95.9 WATD.
It's the little old lady from Pasadena. The little old lady from Pasadena.
And welcome back to the Car Doctor. Welcome back to the Car Doctor program. And we're almost out of time, but let's try real quick. Let's get to Kevin and Dennis. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Yeah, just a quick question. I have a 2017 Honda Ridgeline that I'm about to trade. It's been diagnosed as needing a catalytic converter after I had just recently had all the fuel injectors replaced by Honda under warranty and all new spark plugs and other things. Is that still a tradable vehicle? I don't feel like putting the money into the catalytic converter. I want to move on from this vehicle. Is that?
Yeah. No, that is one of the most popular, sort of pickup trucks on the planet. So yeah, absolutely. I think you'll do really well on it. Is it got a check engine light on, or are they just telling you it's going to need a cat?
Yes, it has a check engine light, and Honda and a couple other people have told me. But after having, the fuel injectors replaced in it, and I also had a brand new transmission replaced under warranty too.
Wow.
It's a nice riding car, but this was, as you said before on your thing, this is the first year, listening to you earlier, first year of that model, and this one's had some problems for me, but it's running good except for that check engine light and the...
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if that would be an issue with the dealer.
Yeah, the dealer's going to look at it, and they're going to want to discount it because of the check engine light, but it is what it is, and it's, probably not worth trying to spend the money on the catalytic converter just to trade it in, so...
Yeah, so you think a trade's worthy?
I still think you'll do pretty well with the trade. You might also want to. We're almost out of time, but you also might want to check any of those online sites like Carvana and just check off check engine light on and see what they give you for a quote, so you know where you are.
Oh, Tom, thanks so much for the information.
All right.
Great show, great radio station.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Bye. Hey, that music means we got to go. Until next week, wear your seatbelt, drive safely, be good to your car, and talk to y'all next week. Bye.